Here's our finished design, and let's look through it before we start to code it. So we want to, since we're still in Photoshop, we want to identify any images that we need to export. Obviously this background texture needs to be exported. We can't recreate that in CSS. And then these arrows and this header image need to be exported. This button, on the other hand, we can recreate with CSS, so we don't need to export that. And this box here can be created in CSS. So really we just have this image and our background. So let's start with our background. What I'm going to do is I'll show you how I would do it with most patterns, and then this pattern's a little easier because it actually has a grid on it. For most patterns, I would come in and look at the pattern itself that I chose and just hover over it. So, because what happened is I took a default pattern from subtlepatterns.com. I'll show it to you. Here's what the pattern was, and then I turned it into, sorry, that's what it was, and I turned it into this. So it, now it has a totally different style, but it's still the same pattern, just different color and everything. So what I'll do is go in and see what size the original pattern was by hovering over it, and you can see that it's 200 by 200 pixels. And then what I'll do is create a new version of all the layers merged together, because the pattern is made of these two layers. So I'm going to duplicate that, and then Command E to merge them together. And then in this case, I can see where it repeats really easily. Oops. But normally I would grab a 200 by 200 pixel square, and I can just drop that on exactly where it goes, and then nudge it over till it's just perfect, and then copy and go to Command N to create a new, and then save this in my Save for Web boxes over here. And lower is fine. Let's see, just set a JPEG with the quality. That's something that looks decent. And let's see, now I gotta remember where I put this. Application design book, talk, workshops, site. There we go. And let's just say background, workshop background.jpg. Okay, that's one of our images. The next one, I'm going to deselect and then just delete that layer because it was just temporary. For the next image right here, I could use @fontface in CSS3 to include these bits of text with the handwriting font. But for that little bit of text, I don't think it's worth it. So I'm actually just going to include all of this in one large image. Conveniently, that's all right there. And I'm going to select this background as well. So I'm going to select kind of a bunch of layers. So I've got my entire browser window group and then some background layers. And what I'm going to do is use this tool called DevRocket, which is available for $10. Just Google it. And hit UI snips, which is my favorite feature. And it'll grab those layers and pull them into a new box, new dialog. Excuse me, a new canvas. And then what I can do is come in and just crop it down to what I want, which I absolutely love. There's another way I could do it, because here I'm trying to figure out where those shadows end. I could actually make it even easier on myself by just sampling this color so I make sure that I have it, and then deleting these two layers and hitting UI snips. Again, I could have just done this in the... Oh, actually, sorry. I don't need these bits of text because those are super easy to recreate with CSS. Okay, now if I hit UI snips, you'll see that it brings it in right to the edge of that drop shadow and figures where that shadow ends for me. And then that way I don't have to worry about accidentally cropping my shadow or something terrible like that. Okay, now I can save this out. We're going to do a JPEG. That's kind of large, but you'll see that to get this text, I need to set the quality moderately high. That's a large image. I'm just going to deal with it in this case. Workshop header.jpg. And that is actually all of our images exported. So let's close out of those unnecessary windows. And after that, it's just code. So I'm going to bring over a code window. I'm using the program Espresso to code in, but you can code in whatever you like. All right. So I've got some basic HTML, doc type, header, and then I'm linking to this style sheet right there. Okay, I'm going to put this off to the side and just set it so I can see both. And just, I'm going to start adding some code in here. So let's do div id equals page. Close that. We want a header. Inside of there, I'll do an H1, and then this is where we're going to do a bunch of our actual content. And in here, I want that text to show up, so I'm actually going to do an H2 and say Designing Web Applications Workshop. And then put these bullets into an unordered list. And nobody's going to see this because I'm going to hide it and replace it with the image. But we still want it there for anybody who's using screen readers or anything else, or for search engines, you know, just so it's there for whatever reason the image can't be read. Okay, close off that UL, and that's the end of that. Then down here I want another H2 that's going to be the time. And let's see, I need to close off my header. Then down here I've got the content, and that's in 2, so I'm going to say div id content and close that, and then a sidebar div. And that's it for the main elements. I'm going to copy and paste all of this massive amount of content over and then start formatting it. So let's say this is a paragraph, but I'm just going to say add a class of lead because I have a slightly larger font size on it. And that'll let me style it. Let's make these H3s. Copying and pasting to save 5 seconds. Okay, now we need to start a bunch of paragraphs. And that's an unordered list. And then let's close all those paragraphs. This would be the tedious part of coding that nobody actually wants to do. Okay. And let's see. Oh, that unordered list. So let's go UL. Open and close our list items for each one. And then close the entire unordered list. and save that. Let's hit preview and just check out what it looks like. Obviously it doesn't look like anything because we haven't added any CSS. One thing to worry about is you see all these weird things in here. It's because I copied and pasted some rich text characters. HTML doesn't like that. So let's go find one of them and I'll show you how to fix it. So in our lead-in paragraph there, in this 4-hour online, it's that. So I'm going to actually do a find and replace. So I'm going to find all of them and replace them. It looks basically the same, but this one has a little curve to it. And that one's straight. Replace all. Save. Now when we come back, you can see that there aren't any more of those weird characters, which is awesome. Okay, more content to fill in. So we've got this entire sidebar. Let's grab this section. Just tab that in. Okay, so this was our H2. Actually, no. This is an H3 size because I needed to match what I did in the content area. And these will be H4s. And this down here, that's a special character as well, and I would just want 3 dots. That's a paragraph, and then these are unordered lists. And I'm just going to copy and paste this down. Okay, and then close all of these. Close the UL too. Okay, and that's good. Come back over here. There's what all that content looks like. Let's see, I've got a few more of these odd characters to fix. Where are they? There's one. So I'm basically just retyping it, but I can just search again. Find them all. Replace all. Save and refresh. So that ... needs to be fixed as well. Okay, if we find any more, we will fix them as we go. So now, that's all our content. Oh, it's almost all our content. We're getting there. Now I want to add a horizontal rule. That'll be our divider line, and then I can grab all of this, paste it in. Okay. This is going to be our purchase box. And this will be an H3. And then finally we need that button, which is just going to be a link to Gumroad. And that will say reserve your seat. Okay, that's all of our text. We've got everything in place. It's time for some CSS. So let's kick things off. First of all, I'm using a font from Google Web Fonts called Open Sans. I happen to like it a lot. So we'll start with that. Okay. Next on the body, I want a margin of 0 pixels, a padding of 0 pixels. That's just some good things to have by default. My default font size is going to be 14 pixels. And then for a font family, I'm going to say Open Sans, which I just declared up here. And then we'll go to Helvetica, then Arial, and then sans serif. Okay, now background. I want, in case the image doesn't load or before it loads, I want kind of a similar color. So I'm just going to pre-fill these in. And then this is workshop-background.jpg, and I want it to repeat. And I don't really care where it starts. Okay, let's look at that. You can see there's our font is set and our wonderful repeating background image. Okay, so now let's start styling that page, and let's give it a width of 1000 pixels, background color of white, and then margin 100 pixels on the top. I'll tweak that later, and then there we go. Perfect. So we've got a little bit of a page going on, and let's add a shadow to it. So 0 pixels, that would be our X offset. 0 pixels again for a Y offset, and then 10 pixels for our blur, and then we're going to add an RGBA color of 0.5. And I could actually go back and look at the layer style in Photoshop and see that I actually did a Y offset of 1, so I can make these match exactly what I had in Photoshop. A size of 10, and then I had 19. We'll just change that to 20, or to 0.2 rather, for the opacity. And then I can just duplicate this down and set one for Firefox, and then a generic box shadow. And let's preview that, and you can see there's a slight box shadow on there. You know, I might make it a little stronger, go up to, let's say 40. Unfortunately, I need to change it in 3 places. It's where you'd want to use SAS or less to automate some of this, but I don't need to for now. Next, border radius, 5 pixels, and then I'm going to paste all of that down. And some nice rounded corners. Okay, now let's code that header. So we can go look and see we had an ID of header. And let's give that a background. Let's go figure out what the background is. It's this color right here, F1, repeated. Okay. And let's say text align center, because both of the headers in there are centered. And then most of the work's going to happen on this header image ID. And I'm going to go height, I'll just guess 500 pixels. Text indent, let's see, I could do text indent, I'll show you 2 ways. Like that, that would pull all the text way off the left side. But rumor has it that causes some additional page load times and more work rendering for the browser. So instead, what I'm going to do is set the top padding to 500 pixels. Is that what I want to do? I actually don't remember how to do that technique off the top of my head, so I'm going to just use the text indent. I may come back to this. But this one works fine. Everybody used it for years. Yeah. And our image is called workshop header. Workshop with an H, header.jpg. And no repeat. And our width will be set to large automatically. But let's do center top. So center would be our X, or our horizontal alignment, and top would be our vertical alignment. Now this is starting to look something like our design. You can see that's all sitting in there nicely. We need to fix some of this stuff. but we're getting there. So let's style our header H1. Our font weight is normal. Check on our size is 30 points. I'm going to do 30 pixels. Oops. And then I'm just going to do a padding of 20 pixels and 0 pixels. So that's 20 pixels on the top and bottom, 0 pixels on the left and right. And duplicate that for our H2, and we'll just check that. That's 24. Now let's check this out. Now there's a little more space. Still looks weird. So in this case, because it's on top, I'm going to do 0 pixels on the bottom. And I'm going to shorten this up to 480. We're getting there. Let's see, 20 pixels. Let's increase that to 40 pixels on the bottom. Now that looks good. Our top needs some more space up there, so on the H1 I'm going to bring this up to 40 pixels. It's not quite aligned right, is it? So maybe we need a little bit on the bottom, say 10 pixels. That looks better. Okay, now I want that text shadow. So it's X of 0, Y of 1, blur of 0. And text shadow is actually supported, so I don't need to do all of the weird browser prefixes. And there's a really subtle text shadow in there that's hard to see, but subtle's good. Okay, that's the header done. So now we need to create a floating layout for our content. Actually, you'll notice something. The header's not quite done. We lost our rounded corners when we did that. So I'm going to go back to our page and add overflow hidden. And that should get us our rounded corners back. It also added some weirdness, and I don't know what's causing that. It's probably a top margin. Yep. An H1 has all headers have a top margin by default, and that's actually sticking outside of its parent, which is kind of weird. But that kind of thing happens, and so if I just say margin top 0 pixels, you'll see that that disappears. Okay, here I had a bottom border there, and you can see it just makes it look a little bit more crisp. And that was C5, it turns out. And so on the header, it's an easy border bottom, 1 pixel solid. Boom. Alright, now it's time to get into some content. So this one we're going to need a padding of some kind. Let's see what our total width is here. Kind of just, I'm going to set my marquee tool back to normal. Let's just get an idea. I'm not going to follow these numbers exactly. I'm just copying and pasting something. So 580, that sounds about right for our total width, and then our padding on the sides is, we'll say 50. So that means I want a width of 480 and a padding of 50 pixels. Do 40 on the top and bottom, 50 on the left and right. And so this 50 on the left plus 480 plus 50 on the right is going to come to 580. Then I'm going to float that left. And then I'm going to add in my sidebar. I'm going to float the sidebar right. And I'll explain why in a second. And then let's check out what color that is. And let's get a basic width here. $390 we'll say. And I want that same 50 pixel padding. Oops, I'm opening other programs. Okay, so 390, so I want the sidebar to be 290 wide with 50 pixels on either side floated. Oh, look at that. You can see we're already getting it how we want. The reason why I floated this right instead of floating it left is that if I floated it left, it'd have the same effect. I would just need to make sure that my numbers added up to be perfect, and I don't exactly want to do that. Here I've got a few extra pixels in there, and what that'll do is if somebody's zoom is slightly off or something like that, it won't break down to the next line. There's kind of a little bit of a margin for error there, which I like to have. Let's see. Ooh, there's another one of those rich text characters that snuck by. Where was it? There we go. So I just need to retype it as plain text. Much better. Okay. I want to do some basic content formatting now. So this lead in paragraph. Well, first I'm going to come back up to my body and increase the line height. Line height 1.5 EMs. I think everything's a tiny bit taller. And let's style some headers. So I'm actually going to pull out this font weight normal, because I don't need to repeat it, and I don't actually want to repeat this text shadow either, because all the headers can have that text shadow. That's fine with me. I'm going to use all padding instead of margins, because padding sometimes just works better. So those are just some defaults. That's actually too much. Let's go 20 and 10. Okay. So there's some basic stuff, and then I'm going to go style the individual H3. Let's look. This is what I was calling an H3, and that's 24 pixels. And that's an H4, and that's 18. Let's check that out. There we go. Now it's starting to look like our design, the way we want it to. Alright, next is this HR right there. You can see in our design, it stretches all the way to the side, and there it does not. So let's style our sidebar HR. So here my total width is 390 pixels, but currently my sidebar is only 290. So I'm going to just hard code it to 390. I'm going to get rid of the border, because it has that indented look right now, and that's not what I want. Then I'm going to say border top, and then set something else for the border bottom. Oops, if I could type, that would help. Okay, let's go figure out what those are. So zoom way in. Actually, there's an easier way to do this. I can just check this color, so that's going to be for our top border, and then white for our bottom border, and white is FFF. Okay, and then I'm going to do a margin left, a negative 50 pixels, and that will pull it over to that edge. See, now it lines up as we would expect. And then I'm actually going to set all the margins. So this goes clockwise. So starting with the top. So top, right, bottom, left. It's a little better spaced out. Okay. I actually don't like how far this is sticking down from the top, so I'm going to change that to, and that's just on the page, and I'm going to drop this down to 60. Somehow this got awfully close. There we go. And that got awfully close to, oh, I know what it is. When I turned off all of the margin on the H1s, kind of the default margin, that screwed things up. Lots of space is good. Okay. That's all good. I like the way that's formatted. Oh, I want to set all my headers to be black. Actually, to be not quite black. And then all my body copy by default to be a little bit lighter. Just because I like how that looks. And this is my design, so I get to do what I want. No, it's actually good practice to not have pure black on pure white. Okay, now we're going to get into some fun. This button, first this box and then the button. So, let's see, what did we call that box? Called it purchase container. Let's say sidebar, class purchase container. And this, I don't need to set a width on it because it's going to fill the width. Let's say padding 40 pixels. Background white. Oh, we need a drop shadow. I'm going to copy and paste from up there. Let's see how that looks. It's basically there. We're getting there. The drop shadow is way too strong. Oh, I also am going to copy and paste my border radius and then just tone it down. I think I had 3 pixels. And then I'm going to tone down that drop shadow too. Ooh, that drop shadow is still too strong. We're going to go down to 10%. That's okay. Okay, so now I've got this padding on top of my header is clashing with the padding on the container and making it really tall. So I'm just going to drop the padding on the container down to 10 pixels. Cool. Maybe 15. Alright. Now, let's compare. I feel like this box is smaller than it is in my design. Let's see what the width is in my design. It's 240, and then I can inspect this and see 290. Oh, so it's exactly the same. Interesting, because 58 the padding on each side. Anyway, you get the idea. Okay. I'm going to grab this button color and we're going to start styling the button. So let's make it really specific. Sidebar dot purchase container dot purchase button. Okay, and let's display block because A tags are not blocked by default. 30 on the top. No, let's see. It's way too much. 15 on the top. Nothing on the right and left because we're just going to do a text align center. And then we won't have to worry about that. Color, I want white. I hide a border. Let's go figure out what the border is. Just sample that slightly darker color. Okay, and then I'm actually going to say border bottom and do that same color. I'm just going to bring it up to 4 pixels. Let's see what this looks like. Let's see what I've forgotten to do. Okay, we're actually getting there. That text is the wrong size. Let's see, I think I did 18 pixels. No, I did 20. Text decoration, none, to get rid of that underline. Oh, then let's do that negative text shadow. So this is -1 pixel because I want it to come 1 pixel up from the bottom. And then I think that was like a 0.3. We'll just see how that looks. That's not bad. Did I have a radius on it? Doesn't look like it. Okay. Let's go 0.5 because I can't see that. Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. I wonder if this button's going to get buried down in the corner. We'll have to run an A/B test on that or something later. Maybe try a different placement. But that'll work for now. This space right here is really close together, so I'm going to fix that just by adding a margin top. That didn't seem to do anything. It might be, oh, there we go. Cool. That looks good. So we need to finish out this button with some a gradient. Let's do that next. Let me pull up Chrome and let's go to CSS3 gradient generator. I happen to like this one for no particular reason, and then I'm just going to sample 2 colors. And I'll plug this one into we only need 2. I'll plug this one into the top of my gradient. And then plug the other one into the bottom of the gradient. Oops, and this should. That's a very slight gradient, and then I can copy that code and paste it. There's a very slight gradient. It looks quite nice. And now I just need some shadows, so I'm going to do a box shadow of inset, 3 pixel blur, oh, okay, so I actually want this to be white, and that's 255. So you can see that subtly coming in. I'm going to actually do like 0.6 and then increase the blur to 5. That's actually too strong. Okay, I'm going to do 0.4. Okay, so that's subtly coming in from the sides, and I just want a little stronger one on top, so I'm going to add a comma. Also inset, and then let's see, RGBA. So it's a little stronger on the top than on the sides. And now I can copy and paste this down. So you can see how to add multiple box shadows, which in this case I'm using both of them as highlights, by using the comma. And then that inset keyword is really awesome. as well. Okay. So reserve your seat will now take care of that. Oh, we're going to change the size of this lead-in paragraph too. So let's come up here and go. That's a little bigger. Let's see if I change anything else about it. Was it 18 or just 16? It was 18. I'm going to increase the line height because that's not so good. That's too much. Let's go for 1.8. Still too much. Let's see. 1.5 EM up there, so let's go maybe 1.7 down here. Okay. I think we're done, actually. That looks good. So thanks for watching this screencast, and consider checking out the workshop.